Okay. All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the NFL Alumni's continuing coverage from Super Bowl 59. I'm Bram Whiteside. We're presented by Passera. Better is possible. This is Roman Gabriel III.
Hey, Graham. Pleasure to be with you, brother. Love the NFL alumni. I've been involved with them for a lot of years, and I know my dad was too. So.
Yes, Dad was a legendary quarterback.
Yes, sir.
And we were just talking before we started taping. You've been coming to Radio Row for
almost
how
30
many
years. Since '94.
You look around this room now and you think about what it looked like then.
Oh, if I told you how it worked then, you'd laugh at me. There was no picture identification. You could get into the Super Bowl and you would give your credential to somebody. You could pretty much do anything you wanted. In Radio Row, you'd have players that would come in and mostly newspaper back then and TV stations. So there's very little internet or outside. Very little people that would do anything on a camera. I mean, it was basically radio. And newspaper.
Yeah.
So it was a much different time, and the Super Bowl's come a long way. But some great stories, back then. I go far back. My first radio show in '94, there was no ESPN radio. So ESPN would call us about getting Chris Berman and Tom Jackson and all the Monday night guys on and to promote college football. So it was a much different landscape. It was more about local.
Yeah.
But this is amazing because of the internet and because of what you can do with information. It used to be that, you couldn't send two megabytes.
Yeah.
It would take 100 years to do. So we used to have to tape everything. You have to render everything. Now everything's instant. You can do it right now, right to your audience. So it's absolutely amazing.
What do you think your dad would think of the state of the NFL now?
My dad was an old school guy. He didn't like how flag football the NFL has become. A lot of the guys when he played, quarterbacks got hit. There wasn't any. You can hit a quarterback about here now, but when he played the game, it was a man's sport. It was a different sport. Yeah. It was everybody for themselves, and you hit each other wherever you were.
Yeah.
There was late hits weren't called, and hitting in the head wasn't a big deal. So it was just a different time and a different game. But he was there when the golden age of the NFL, some of the greatest quarterbacks that ever played the game. When you talk about Joe Namath and Terry Bradshaw and Roger Staubach and Johnny Unitas and Bart Starr, Don Meredith, these were ones that our age group looks up to because our fathers took us to our first game, when we were kids. So I meet a lot of corporate guys that are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. Hey, my dad took me to my first Rams game. I fell in love with your dad, became a Rams fan. Yeah. Same thing with the Philly fans that they come. So, the game is a much different game. Obviously, it's still exciting and awesome, but it was just a different time.
Yeah, it was. What would you think he would say about the scope and popularity of the sport now?
When he played the game, the way the NFL worked is blackout rule. You could only show your team's games.
Yeah.
So you only saw that, and then they went to one other game, a 4 o'clock game that you could see outside. But when I grew up, the only way you could see highlights of another team was on This Week in the NFL with Tom Brookshire and Pat Summerall.
That's right.
So it was really a local thing. There was no free agency, so these kids today are about following their favorite star around. It was all about team then because guys didn't move. So when my dad played for the Rams from 62 to 72, I had 44 parents because it was the same group of guys every single year. They couldn't go anywhere. So when he signed with Philadelphia in '73, as in the trade, it was his largest contract, which was $300,000, which at that time was a lot of money. But today, that's not even a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
I mean, so the game was different in the way you looked at the game. Most of the rules were set for the defense. Lower scoring games because you could put your hands on receivers all the way down the field until the ball was thrown. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, 5-yard rule, and then you got to let them go, and you got these guys that are 6'5", 230 that run a 4.40 that are down the middle, and then you bring concussion problems into the game because they're moving so fast. It was a totally different way the game was played.
Yeah. So you have a deal with Fathead.
Yeah.
You can use his legacy. I want to ask you about that, but I also want to ask you, why is it important for you to carry on the legacy of your father?
Well, first of all, my dad and I had a relationship that was centered around our love for football. When I was 6 years old and I was watching my dad started playing when I was born and didn't stop till I was in high school. So I thought every NFL player played for 17 years. So what did I want to be? My dad wasn't a lawyer or a doctor. That's what my dad did, and I loved it, and I was like, that's what I want to do. So I'm 7 years old since then, and I set my goal out to play pro football, and I have the best example in the world to watch what a champion does every single day, sacrifices that he made to play the game in the off season as well. So I knew what it took, which is kind of an advantage, for kids of professional athletes, because there's a way to do things and a process, and he was one of the hardest workers ever. So he taught me hard work. He taught me about what it takes to be successful. But more importantly, he really believed in the platform of an NFL player, that his job off the field was to please the fans. It was to use his platform to make a difference in other people's lives. So he raised over $10 million in his lifetime for children's charities. So he taught me that at an early age, that you use your platform. It's a responsibility to play the game the right way. And so he also inspired other younger players and mentored a lot of players that came into the Rams and the Eagles that still to this day tell me about how he made a difference in their career. So what I've been doing with this foundation, my wife and I, since 2008, which is a drug and alcohol abstinence program, and now a fentanyl education campaign, which is the #1 killer of teenagers in our country. I want to carry on my dad's legacy, because I wouldn't be who I am today and doing what I'm doing if he hadn't set the path for me, and I know that he would want to carry that on. So that leads into fathead.com. I want to thank Chris Hetherington, the CEO of Fathead. I met him through a good friend, and I said, would you be interested in memorializing my father through a Fathead? He said, yeah, we have a Legends collection. So he's let me design it old school. The one coming out, which we have a picture of somewhere, but is a 1969 MVP year with his white-on-white Rams blue and white helmet with the horns. MVP year 1969, the 50th anniversary of the NFL. Blood, dirt. So it's a full-size stand-up, full-size sticker set, full-size Fathead. So we'll be announcing that soon in the future here, but I'm very excited about that. And they love what we're doing with youth, and of course they're reaching our audience, which is 5 to 17-year-old kids, through their Fathead product. And I'll say how things have changed. When I was growing up, Sports Illustrated had the posters that were $2 a piece, and you would order those large posters, put them up all over your walls as wallpaper. So Fathead took it to a whole new different realm for these kids to be able to idolize your favorite player and stick him on the wall and have a life-size thing that you can mess around with all the different stuff. So it just goes to show you that old things don't die, they just come in new packages.
Yeah, Roman, it's a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, do me a favor. Have your audience go to soldouttv.com, our website, look up fentanyl education, educate yourselves, because we don't want to see accidental deaths, and that's what's happening. It's the #1 killer of kids because they don't know, and parents are dying from these fake fentanyl pills because they're ordering them online. So if you go to our website, soldouttv.com, click on fentanyl education, you can learn it right on your device and then send the information to your friends, family, co-workers, so that we can get this message out. Tackling fentanyl, saving lives.
Thank you, Roman. Appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it, Graham. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.